Off-road guy here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you the Torq Motorsports Dana 60 big brake kit. The Dana 60 originally had almost 13-inch brake rotors, and you'll be upgrading to 2009 Dodge 3500 front brake rotors and calipers, which are 14-inch. As you can see, that's quite a bit bigger. Here with this upgrade you can see that the brake pads, so like right here we have the original Dana 60 brake pads, and right here you can see the upgraded Dodge brake pads. You can see quite a bit more material. Alright, and here's a caliper comparison of the two. This is the original Dana 60 caliper that came on it. See how it has a much larger single large caliper piston for it. And just a comparison size. Here's the Dodge caliper, which is, as you can see, dual piston, but smaller ones. So, and I happen to get the power stop, which are painted red and powder coated red and all that. Thought they'd be nicer, and I got these off Amazon if you want to know, but I also saw them on Rock Auto. All this stuff I either got from Rock Auto or Amazon. A couple things you have to remember with this upgrade. First thing is you have to upgrade to at least 17-inch rims for your vehicle. Like I originally had 16-inch rims on the Blazer. I just recently upgraded to 18-inch. As you see here, remove the brakes and the rotor and the hub and rotor assembly. That whole deal there. Remove it. And the other thing you have to do is have your hubs machined down. The diameter here machined down to, instead of having the, you know how the original brakes are behind the hub? Well, the new brake rotors are going to be sliding over the top like I have a 2010 Dodge. It's exactly the same. They'll be sliding over the top. But because, as you can see here, it's not physically able to go over the top because it gets stuck because the diameter of the hub here, this section, is too big. So you're going to have to take and have these machined down. And the spec is on Torq Motorsports website, but you have to have it machined down so you can slip the new brake rotors over the top of the hubs. So the first thing you got to do is remove it and then remove the brake rotors off the hubs, which you have to take and drive out your studs. The best way I've found of driving out the studs is I take an old lug nut, and I have a bunch of them now since I replaced the rims on my Blazer with the different rims. The original lug nuts looked like just plain Jane look, so I went to these thinner spline style lug nuts on here. But best thing I found, you should take an old lug nut, screw it on about at least halfway on down, and then take a hammer and just take and tap it down. Unscrew the lug nut off, and as you can see, I've taken it out of all the rest of them out. Alright, I've taken it. The hubs are back from the machine shop. As you see see how they're smooth here instead of there used to be a lip sticking out. Further, this is smooth here. There used to be a little lip sticking out. And then also, I decided to try these lug studs, so that, see how there's a little bit of the shoulder sticking out for the brake rotor to sit on. I mean, it's not necessary because I looked on my Dodge, which has the free spin kit on it, and it doesn't use these wheel studs. It uses a different style. But I decided to go with these, and it worked out great. And there's the part number, Dorman part number, if you're wanting it. So you have to take and pull the spindle out a bit in order to take as the bracket, as you can see here, Yeah, it's just kind of fits out, fits behind the spindle, and then you take and push it on, and see how it goes in to the knuckle right there. So the next thing we have to do is take and trim up the brake shield a little bit there. Not too big a deal. Alright guys, well, it looks like I have everything installed, but as problems come by when you're making modifications and upgrades, and that's why I do these videos, so that you can look the product over and see how it looks from somebody else holding it and moving it around. But I also like to tell you little problems that you're going to run into when you're installing it. So this one's a small problem. So you see here, the bolt is making contact with the rotor. Now this is just a factory bolt I bought. These are Robusto brand, but I went and took a bolt out of my Dodge's caliper to compare sizes, and they are the exact same size. So Torq Motorsports decided that obviously this bracket here, because I was looking at that too, the one on my Dodge is significantly thicker than this one. So if they just would have made it, you see how much space is in there, I would have probably done it so there's probably they would have made it about a 1/4 inch thicker. You could just use a factory bolt and not have to cut the bolt off, which that's what I'm going to end up having do on this with this particular problem, is just take and cut the bolt down a little bit. Not a big deal, but just little problems that come in when you're doing upgrades. Alright, so the second problem I've run into is, I do have high steer and crossover steering on my Blazer, but and as you can see that block for the high steer it's pretty thick, but you figure this is the side, even if you have like a stock steering setup, you're gonna have, it's the arm, it sticks out here for forward, it's a push-pull, so you're gonna have an arm sticking out here, and you're gonna have, maybe it's enough to have that thinner block here, because I know it is probably about half as thick, I bet, as this high steer arm is. But for it to be that tight, I don't know. If they just would have rotated the bracket a couple degrees around, if you figure you'd rotate it around a little bit and then set it up, it would have went in there for like a factory setup. So, but I think I got a solution for that. So when you have the bolts loose, you can just take and rock it like this. So I took and cut the head off one of them. So what I think I'm going to end up doing is taking and welding a little nut, so you have something to grab onto if you want to unthread it, and then take and this is a metric thread. I already did the thread pitch. I'm not sure what size round. I'm going to go measure it, but this is a metric thread, so I got to go and get a nut for it, I think. So what I'm going to do is take and thread this in here. Take and hook it. That, or maybe get a longer nut, because there's not a whole lot of thread sticking out for a nut. But take and put a nut on there to hold the caliper. That's going to be kind of a pain in the ass setup for. Alright, so I took and modified the bolt. The factory ones have about 2 inches of thread, so about 2 inches there. I cut the one off to 1 5/8 inches for the bottom bolt, so it doesn't take and make contact with the rotor. Then I went and bought two bolts that had see, the original ones had 2 inches of thread showing, so I went and bought 2 more bolts that had about 2 1/4 inches of thread showing. Chopped the head off, ground the end down so I could put a 1/2 inch wrench on there in case it got stuck or something. But these bolts are 18 millimeter by 2.5 thread pitch. So all I'm going to do is take and thread this in here like so. Take and see it lined up. I put a little bit, threaded a little more in so that it'd fit through. And then I'm going to back it out. Well, actually, take and have to thread it in a tiny bit more. Actually, you just take it and put the nut on. So, and then take and put the knot on like so and tighten it down. But see how tight it is there? So I just got done test driving the Blazer, and I'm very happy with the braking performance she has now. I wasn't trying very hard, and she kind of chirped the tires braking a little bit. I could have locked her up if I wanted to, but so before, even with, like, now I have 38-inch tires that are quite a bit wider too, so they're heavier than the old tires. And with the 37 12.5 16s I had on it, I wasn't able to lock those tires either. The front end would dip down and it would brake pretty good, but I wasn't able to lock the tires. Now, when I was testing it, just, getting into it a little bit, the tires started getting to that point where they were locking up a little bit. They didn't go full lock because when I put the rear disc kit on it, I put a proportioning valve, because when I put the Dana 60 and I put rear discs, and when I took and did a full lock up on it, the rear axle would lock up first. So I was getting too much pressure to the rear, so I put a proportioning valve in the rear to lower the pressures down. So now I think that I haven't tuned it more. I got more tunability, and I'm really happy with it now. But I think I'll have more tunability. I need to adjust the proportioning valve so it puts more pressure to the rear brakes now. So I think I'm going to be able to get a lot better braking performance out of it. And the new brakes look pretty nice behind those big rims now. So I think it's a worthwhile kit. I mean, this isn't an extremely heavy truck. I mean, it's heavier than stock. You figure, I think she weighs in somewhere in the 7,000 pound range, whereas stock she's about 6. And with the big tires, that's adding more rotation to they're like, they turn into flywheels, so they're kind of, when you put bigger, heavier, especially since I went to 18-inch rims, that makes it a little bit heavier. Bigger rims equals a heavier rim and tire package. And right now I think it'd either be a tie, or the Blazer might stop faster than the Dodge now. I think after I tune the proportioning valve for the rear, I think it's going to be able to outbrake the Dodge. But I mean, that's just because the Dodge weighs so much more than the Blazer does. But with the same front brakes as the Dodge,